Hello and welcome to the Space Between Ideas. I'm Blaine Gates and Mr. Gordy Gord is down here. He brought me a toy, his toy. It's a big moment for us. I found Gordon next to the hospital in our village in November of last year. I didn't actually record the specific date, but I would imagine it's about this time. And so it's the first time he brought me actually, I finally gave him a toy a couple of weeks ago. In this village, people often leave stuff next to the garbage can if they don't want it anymore. They don't have garage sales, and if they just set it next to the garbage can. Somebody else walks past and picks it up. I got some shelves for my tools in Gordon's room, which is basically like my garage. And there's this big mirror. Somebody just left a gigantic mirror, and so I put it up. It's reflecting light back into the room. So it's quite an interesting village. It seems like I'm in some existence, post-Soviet, maybe even pre-Soviet existence, although I live in a Soviet-style apartment building. We have like 3 apartment buildings in our village, and around, between 2,000 and 3,000 people. So anyways, what's going on? In our last video, well, let's take a look. What's going on? So in our last video, I did that live lecture series, and then in the last video on Tuesday, Gordon, shh. In the last video, I was able to actually use this new format of this. So it goes back to the book Create Crucial Insight, and then we go into this thing called state purposes. But I just feel like, as I've tried to use this format with a huge amount of people, they tend to lose interest, or because it takes a lot of energy and mental focus to be able to get through all of it. So, hold on. And so in order to test my ability to work through Tom's book, and also in order to get some value, I realized I wasn't able to work with somebody directly. I wasn't able to, they tell you that to learn something, you should teach it. But there was nobody that was able to get through even just a few words of this checklist. The thing is, it's mathematics. It's so thick in concept that it's just so hard for people to grasp it. And as you can see, it took me 21 videos in order to really grasp it. And then from there, I created this simplified version, which I can use in my own situation and my own understanding. That enabled me to really identify my own purposes, to talk about the vision that I have. Like, what is the vision? And then to talk about the prerequisites, meaning like, what do I have to build in order to achieve this objective? And the example I gave was like, this is the fire that goes underneath of the rocket ship, and then this is the actual rocket ship that's going somewhere. This is the aim of the arrow, and this is the bow that shoots the arrow forward. In either case, we have this concept here called form agendas. And okay, so it's time to start making some plans. But this, as you can see, there's nothing here that's specific. This is just the concept. This is the software. This is the white copy that anybody could use this in order to move forward with what they envision. You have to give it some context. You have to decide exactly what is it that you're trying to do. And so then I tried to explain how I'd like to build a coaching platform, and where people can sell courses, and also where they can attract student teachers, and eventually their student teachers would also be teaching on the platform, and they would be teaching the material of the original course creator. Okay, and the reason is because coaching, when you start coaching, it's really hard to improve as a coach unless you have a lot of coaching hours. And it's also hard to improve your payment or even get paid unless you're able to attract customers. And so for the first thing, how can I get experience? Well, you have to teach, you have to coach, you have to actually go through the actual, you have to apply the principles to examples, and the people that you coach are going to give you those examples. And then as you work through examples, then you start to understand the process of coaching. But who's going to pay you to do that if you don't know what you're talking about? Right? So this is the whole purpose of having student teachers. Everybody knows that there's student teachers on the platform, and there are going to be some of these student teachers who really, really want a lot of hours, so they reduce their price. All of a sudden, you have people like, okay, well, if the price for a coach is this, then yeah, I'm definitely willing to get a coach. And then as that person improves, then eventually they start to, their schedule starts to fill up. And as your schedule fills up, then you can increase your price. Really, really simple market dynamics. All right, but what does that look like? There's two phases. There's the independent phase where I am actually building the platform, my own platform. All right, so I read Tom's book, and then, I've taught, probably need to add a couple of them since Tuesday. And I got to add another video from Tuesday. And eventually I'm creating courses and authoring programs. I think other methodologies, I was thinking about that when I was running last night, and I think it doesn't really matter if you say the word other methodologies, because it just means more courses. And then I started thinking, okay, for example, like SWOT analysis, or, what are these other ones? Design thinking, or Porter's 5 Forces, or business model canvas. In some cases, people own copyrights, and so you don't necessarily want to teach other people's material. And in fact, I don't want to create a course for everything and everyone's material. I want to attract other teachers, and then they are going to be able to create courses as well. I'm very, very laser focused in just teaching Tom's book, and I've benefited a lot personally from the process of reading, studying, and teaching his book, and that's where I am a specialist. And yeah, I know other methodologies, and I've been teaching some during my lessons, but at the same time, I don't want to create courses. So, all right, so I'm going to just delete that because there. And then eventually we also need to do a website. We need to do, well, I have a website, but I need to improve the website and then enhance the sales funnel and marketing strategies. So that's what I've been doing, like basically for the last couple of years. And now I want to transition into interdependent, which means I need to find teachers, add them to my website. Since that video from a couple days ago, I started thinking about some things like, how do I apply these ideas, and then how do I share these ideas, and what am I thinking about? How are we going to move forward? What's the next step? So I put together this little lesson plan today. And so what do we got? Form agendas. We need to create an agenda. Oh, by the way, so I also saw this interesting, if you go to the Y Combinator, so he says, when I was a founder working on consumer stuff, I would download every consumer
app that came out.
Literally.
And I would study every onboarding flow, and I would study everything about the service. I would study the viral loops.
Yes.
And just constantly be trying to challenge myself to make sure I knew more than anyone else about what the new products were.
Yeah.
And
what they could do. Yeah.
And so there's, again, I don't know why you wouldn't be looking at every AI coding tool that comes out, or
Yes.
every workflow tool that comes out.
Yes.
And signing up.
Right, so it's interesting because he's saying like, all right, if you want to create a successful website, if you want to create a successful business, if you want to do something successful, then you also have to look at your competitors specifically. And also you need to keep abreast of all the different types of products and services that are coming out. You have to have like your finger on the pulse of what's going on. And right now it's all about AI. And that's why I wrote this thing where it's like, okay, so every time you start working, spend 20 minutes to see what AI tools can help you do that work. That needs to be like a habit. And then I wrote this other thing, what is the positive end result? And then, so then I kind of created this little lesson plan for today. All right, so what's going on with this lesson plan? First question is, what do you want to do? This comes from recognize outcomes. My focus, what I think I've added a little bit to my contribution to Tom's work is this concept I call the endeavor cycle. He talks about the endeavor elements. His endeavor elements are create effects. And create effects is here. It's performing actions. Before you create effects, you have to form an agenda. So that's like planning impact. But planning impact, like forming agendas also, you have to question assumptions. So I just took both of those out of Tom's concept of form agendas. I mean, the third step for form agendas is actually choose. So choose a plan. And I just took out the word choose because I just put these two elements. And then when he talks about performing actions, when he says create effects, he's actually talking about you got to do the work. You have to also recognize outcomes is actually part of performing action. So you perform the action and then you recognize the outcome. There's another issue called reuse outcomes. And I feel like reuse is probably a combination of, well, what do you want to do now, right? So here it says, let's go, and then again. And again, it means that once you perform the action, then you have to start again saying, what do you want to do? Meaning you have to reuse what happened. You have to reuse the outcomes. So I removed the word reuse, and I just said take inventory. I think take inventory is really about reuse. So, I mean, really, this is Tom's endeavor elements. There's 2 endeavor elements from form agendas. And then you have all 3 endeavor elements from create effects. But the thing is that take inventory, that's also about shaping potential, which is the the third endeavor element. Maybe we should just take a quick look at those endeavor elements. So if we jump to the beginning of the book, here. So we got do great, think well, be apt. These are the themes. And then the themes, they just carry on to the next section. Create effects, form agendas, and shape potential. It's the same thing. All right, so we're talking about shape potential. Remember, create effects, it means you start to do the work, then you recognize the outcomes, and then you want to reuse. But the thing is, this is where I create this endeavor cycle, because the reuse, it's recognizing the outcome, and then reuse is what brings you back down into shape potential. So then you start doing the potential again. So that means you're going to take inventory. And if you're doing a job over and over and over again, really what you're doing is you're updating your map. And once you've updated your map, then you have to come up with some new ideas, and then you have to decide on a route. You want to check if there's any assumptions that have changed. And I feel like optimized inventiveness is probably part of forming agendas as well. It's a very similar concept, but I just made it a little bit different. All right, good. So we've reviewed this concept called recognizing outcomes. Now, in some ways, you could say recognize outcome. It's like, well, what do you want to do? All right. So somebody in the comments just said, "Hey, I'm doing a job in pharmaceutical sector, but got bored after 2 years." Yeah, I was teaching business English in Moscow for 2 years for a pharmaceutical company, and I was working with all these different business managers. It was interesting. All right, so this is the background. Now we're going to go down to the next section. Making, informing, and implementing decisions. Why? Because remember, today the objective is to talk about horses and bricks. And we're nowhere even close to talking about horses and bricks. What do I mean by horses and what do I mean by bricks? Before we can talk about that, I made a lot of videos about this image, and the main concept is that everywhere in the business, you're always going to have somebody who's going to be talking about vision. You're always going to have a manager who's managing people and processes. You're always going to have to analyze the data. You're always going to have to create some thinking framework for how to solve the problems. And then eventually somebody is going to actually have to do the service. Someone's going to have to record the transaction. And then there's usually some kind of database. You want to open your own chemist shop? All right, good. So if you're going to open your own chemist shop, then the question is, like, how are you going to develop a vision? What kind of chemist shop is it going to be? But then you also have to have managers who are going to be running different aspects of your business. You're going to have to look at some coaching, like who in this chemist shop business has workable models for how you're going to run this business. You're going to need to talk to some analysts who can crunch the numbers to see how the flow of business actually works. Then you're going to be hiring some technicians who are going to actually do the work in your shop. You're going to be hiring lawyers, accountants, purchasing department. You're going to have to do some registration. Maybe there's some subsidies, so you can get some money from whoever is promoting this business. And then also you're going to have a bunch of databases called a librarian. You're going to have different computer software and different databases. So every business is a combination of all these things. And I was going to go through like 4 examples, but I think your example here of a chemist shop is really good. So there you go. Now, the thing is, like, okay, so these 7 different roles, the question is, how are you going to apply those roles? At what level? Like you, as the executive, if it's your business, if it's your shop, you're a chemist shop, then the question is, what's the overall business model and market fit? Where are you going to fit in the sector, in the industry as a whole? What specifically are you going to be cooking in your chemist shop? And okay, so once you've developed that business, then you need to start to think about teams, innovation, capabilities. All right, so then the question is, okay, so who are you going to hire? What do you know? Who are you going to work with? What does your team look like? And then who's the competition? Who are the other chemist shops in the area, maybe outside of the area? Who are you competing with? And next, you start to create plans. So when we talk about understanding data and analyzing the past, of course, this is connecting. Now we're getting very connected with the analyst and the coach. In fact, I think both of these are talking about the analyst and the coach, because when you talk about who's in the room and what are we up against, you need an analyst to do this work. And then when you create your own plans, then you need an analyst and a coach. Or at least I'm talking about the role. So it could be you as the executive or you as the manager, but you just have to use the role of a coach and an analyst in order to get the work done at these levels. Then eventually you're actually going to be performing some tasks. So what's going to be done and how is it going to be done? This is delivering the deliverables. These are the 4 different levels of management. And so when we're coaching, see, every manager is a coach, and also a coach is helping managers, but we need to define what kind of dimension, what manager are we working with? Who are we talking to specifically? All right, so now we're down to the horses and bricks. See, the issue is, like, in order to get things done, you need a habit tracker. What do you want to do? What are the objectives you want to reach? All right, so let's talk about the horse race is horizontal. What do I mean by that? Let's make a table, and let's make it 5, 6 long. Let's do 6 long. So the last one is the result or objective. And then this is the project. All right, so this is what? This is step 1. Okay, so we could call it milestones. Milestone 1, milestone 2, milestone 3, Milestone 4. Now, do you see how it's a horse race? I mean, that's kind of abstract, right? All right, so this is the carrot. This is what the horse eats. That's the result you want. Now, let's look at the example that I have above. So what is it that I'm trying to do? What are the issues I'm trying to face? Okay, so I'm already, like, look, I already have results here, right? I'm teaching people, I'm making videos. So this is not a problem. The problem is here. So I have one introductory course. So we need to create the second course. All right, good. Now, what else? Authoring. So we need to release the first authoring program. Good. And then what's here? So the website. We need to update the website. And what else do we got? Marketing strategies, outreach. My current marketing strategy, as you can see, is that I'm making videos public, and then I cut them up with an automated AI cutter, and then I broadcast these messages. So this is called outbound marketing. It's just like a speaker, making noise, right? It's not inbound marketing. All right, so inbound marketing. We need to take a look at creating an inbound marketing / sales funnel, right? Okay. Now that's all related to my business, my independent business. And really this is also what I'm using to send a message to everyone, because I need to enhance my reputation. I need to attain recognition. See the potential we need to work on. If I'm going to be able to have this vision regarding a coaching company, if I'm going to be able to take the next step and start to invite what? So here, look, if I'm going to be able to find teachers to add to my website, they're going to look at my website and say, what, your website's garbage. I don't want to be part of this. What is this? Right? So these are prerequisites. I have to enhance reputation. I need to attain recognition. How do I do that? By creating and deploying resources, by creating and deploying methods and knowledge. And then, okay, creating and allying with relationships. I feel like creating and allying with relationships is here. It's in here. So the question is, where are you going to find teachers? Process for finding, for onboarding course creators. There you go. So if this is a horse race, we start the horse at the beginning. Well, I guess we don't need the word project anymore because the project is at the end. So we'll just put milestones. All right, so the next stage is like, we're not going to do it right now, but the next stage is going to be to actually list out the milestones for each of these objectives. Now, what do you mean by laying bricks? Laying bricks is vertical. Because the problem that we have, so one of the other thing that I'm doing is I speak a whole bunch of different languages. I speak Chinese. I have an undergraduate degree in China law that was taught in Chinese. I have a 4-year bachelor's degree. I know Chinese. I still take like an hour a week. I take lessons to keep up. And we're focusing on reading mostly Canadian news released by CBC. It's usually about Canadian government affairs. I have like 1 or 2 lessons a week in Russian, and we're watching a TV series called Intern, and then discussing like the grammar and the vocabulary of what the actors and actresses are saying in this film, in this series. And then I have French, so I've created another YouTube channel where I'm sharing with everybody the process of me developing learning materials in order for me to learn French. And then I live in Georgia, this country next to Russia and Azerbaijan, and so now I'm like learning the alphabet. The thing is, like, you have to sit down every day, or try to sit down every day, because learning a language, it takes one little step, one little piece, one little practice, because you have to remember all this stuff, which means you have to use it. So then you have to create activities in order for you to make progress. That's what laying bricks is about. So now that we have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, so the base is going to be 5. And let's say that there's 5 days in a week. So we're going to do 5 by 5. Let's start with 5 by 5. We can change it in some future day, but for now what we want to do, so we put the course here. This is where I pause the video or speed it up or something. This is the problem with creating live videos, is that sometimes I just see, and this is the thing, when I actually work with people, I'm building stuff when we're talking. All right, so there you go. Well, now we only have 4 rows. There. Now, what do you mean by laying bricks? So why is it laying bricks is vertical? Obviously, you can see that a horse race is horizontal. And we're going to go from milestone to milestone to milestone to milestone to milestone. And then suddenly, what? I have a second course. Wow, that's awesome. If you're not able to reach the second milestone, you will never reach the result. So, okay, the question is, what's the first milestone? So for each of these right now, maybe we need another row for this. So we're going to just call this milestone 1, because we're on milestone 1 for all of them, technically, because we haven't thought about this deeper than just what I'm doing right now in front of you. Great. So we're working on milestone 1 for each of these areas. And well, we could do this. I don't know about this, because the thing is that technically, I don't know if this is the best idea, but let's just say it's like Monday, Tuesday, there. Okay, so it's Monday. Well, what are you going to do on Monday? Well, I need to work on my course. I'm working towards milestone number 1. Now, I was watching this Brian Tracy video, and Brian Tracy, he's got 2 things. He's got 2 messages. His first message is, wake up, take out a piece of paper, and write down everything in your head. And he's like, write down your goals in the first person as if you are now achieving it or have already achieved it. I am earning $100 million a second. And okay, that's fine, great. So, but what you're doing is you're pulling out the things that you want, your vision, your goals, and then you're putting on paper and you're saying and then how does it feel to be making $1 million per second? So then you can really find out what drives you, what motivates you, because it's bleeding onto the page every single day. And the second thing that Brian Tracy talks about is, he says that nobody who's successful is lazy. He says you need to develop this sense of urgency. You finish one task and then you go to the next, and then you finish one task and you go to the next. Now, I have a small problem with that, and I'm working on it, because when I was in China, I burned out quite a few times. In 10 years of living in China, I moved there when I was 23. I left when I was 33, and I burned out several times. I was in their top university in Shanghai, the #1 university in Shanghai, top 3 in the nation. I was competing against Chinese people. It was their native language, and these were the geniuses of their country. And so it was quite hard to keep up. When you have 4 courses in one semester, and suddenly you have 6, and then you have 8, and then you have 11 courses in a semester in a foreign language against the world's China's geniuses. And so, sometimes you burn out. And then eventually, when I moved away, it took a while to kind of recover from that experience. And sometimes I feel like, wow, I get really exhausted. And so can I actually let's say it's Monday. Okay, so, but the thing is, you can make it small. It doesn't have to be a big thing. So just list, right? You wake up in the morning on Monday, write down what's one little thing you can do to make progress about my second course. What's one little thing I can do with the authoring program? What's one little thing I can do to update my website? What's one little thing to create an inbound marketing or sales funnel? What's one little thing I can do to make progress for onboarding course creators? Just one little thing. And then what? So it just means you're laying bricks. Laying bricks means, well, I don't know how to, I'll have to change the size of the window. So let's just say we change this color to green. Right, so that's one green brick, and then the next day it's another green brick, and then the next day it's another green brick. You see? And then the next day it's another green brick. It's a habit tracker. So this habit tracker, the first thing it asks you to do, since we've already completed this like gigantic web of what is it that's really motivating Blaine to move forward in his life, and then how do we put that into an actual business concept? And then what's the overall process from independently becoming successful to interdependently becoming successful? What does that actually look like? Besides studying AI tools, what do we actually have to do? We need a habit tracker. So the habit tracker gives us the results that we're trying to obtain related to the overall business concept. This is the big business concept. You okay? And then we got 5 specific things that we're working toward. Then we break it down. We didn't do it today, but we can break that down into milestones. And then once you have the milestone, you put the milestone under each category and you start laying those bricks. This is the habit. You need to put in those habits every single day in order to what? Eventually, I'm going to finish milestone number 1, and I can mark this one green. So this is like the short term. This is the weekly progress, and then this is the milestone progress. So there you go. You got a horse race, horizontal, and you got laying bricks is vertical. So there you go. Another tool from your coach, Blaine Gates, Space Between Ideas. We'll see you next time.